editing Ellie here. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but the beginning of Nayna's introduction was cut out, so I just thought I'd pop in to give her a proper introduction. So on today's episode, we have Nayna joining us, and Nayna is the founder of a project called Hope Created by Nayna, and she's hoping to become an agent for change. And with that, I will get back to our conversation.
Nayna, thank you very much for joining us today and giving us
Thank
your
you for
time.
having me.
No worries. Thank you for giving your time up for us. Why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself and how you've got to where you've got to today?
Okay, well, that's kind of a life question, isn't it, Ellie?
Yes.
So I'll try and keep it short. So I describe myself as a black working class woman who grew up in the West Midlands, so not the most sexy place in the world. And I say that as a Brummie. State educated, non-graduate, failed to meet the career aspirations that were expected of me at the age of 18, or failed to do to get to where I was meant to. But actually, that didn't stop me getting from a Saturday girl to the boardroom at Marks and Spencer. And I think at the age of 63, which is what I am today, as in it's not my birthday today, but anyway.
Happy birthday.
I now realise that actually I was, that lack of entitlement that I had from growing up, whether that be wealth, class or network, is actually one of the things that's made me. And it's made me very determined. It's made me very driven. And I guess that's how you go from non-graduate to boardroom of a corporate business.
So what you said something that was really interesting. I'm from Wolverhampton, so we're probably opposite ends of the West Midlands clan. Similar background as well.
We've got a slightly worse accent, that's all I'd say.
But there's no twinge of it in you whatsoever, Nayna. I would never have guessed that you were from Birmingham.
And I didn't know.
No, there is. And I think if you're a Brummie, you hear it, I think.
I think so, yeah. So similar state educated and all of those things. When you said you didn't meet the expectations, whose expectations was that? Was that your family or was that school or?
Yeah, I suppose really, to cut to the chase, it was, when you have a Indian father and a Jamaican mother, the way it was seen, I suppose, as I said, first generation immigrants, the way to kind of better yourself was not just education, but certain careers paths that you had to follow. And they were the classic, the standard. That's what we need to do. And what I now realise is that nobody, because it just wasn't that time, we do it very differently in terms of how I handle my 22-year-old daughter, for instance. But no one was acknowledging that I was sewing my own clothes. I was knitting my own jumpers. I was loving being in the kitchen and cooking, not necessarily baking, but somebody somewhere in a different genre would have said, she's probably quite creative, as opposed to she could be a brain surgeon. Never going to happen. So,
or a barrister, No, that's a really
or a barrister. I mean, an accountant, even worse, God forbid. So no, and it kind of takes a while for you to work out, certainly did for me anyway, what potentially are the things that you might be good at. And so the advice I've given my kids, who are now 22 and 24, is work out what you really enjoy doing. Work out what you think you are pretty good at, and then you'd go from there, and you kind of work out your career aspirations from that, as opposed to that's the line you need to follow, and come hell or high water, that's what you have to do. Because I just don't think it works like that.
It doesn't work if you don't fit the, does it? It doesn't work if that's not what you're good at.
I don't fit the mould. And there are some advantages to that. There are lots of disadvantages to that. And some of them I feel very strongly about. And what I've come to realise is actually sometimes it's that grit that actually perpetuates or propels you to where you want to be. And a friend of mine said to me quite recently, actually, we were away together, and she just said, I always feel like there's something, Nayna, that holds you back. You know, you give your all, but I always feel like there's maybe 10% more. And this is someone who knows me very well, and she said, you know, I'm keen to understand what that might be. And I didn't answer it straight away because I really wanted to reflect on it. I thought it was a very deep question, quite challenging.
Yeah.
And I went back the next day and I said, you know what? I said, there's a couple of things, really. I said, when I was 14 years old, and talking to my careers teacher in the middle of the corridor at school, my loud, noisy, comprehensive, the teacher said to me, so, you know, Nayna, what do you think you'd like to do when you leave here? And I said, because, you know, I've got somebody else's voice in my head, I think I'd like to go to medical school. And the reply, I promise you, was verbatim, or the day we get a kid from medical school, the day we get a kid into medical school from here, we'll have a day off.
Oh my God.
So clearly the expectations weren't that high from the careers teacher. And equally in my career, you know, going back to answering the question, why do you hold something back? You know, for the first 15, 20 years of my career, I didn't push myself forward. You know, I kind of put a cap on it as to where I thought I could get to, even to the extent. So I worked for Next when, you know, in its glory days when it first opened. And I can remember being asked by my divisional sales manager to go out and from a store manager role to do a regional role. And I just said, no, thanks, because the job I really want is the area manager, because it comes with a white XR3i as a company car, which was sex on wheels at that point. So I was like, no, I'll wait for that. Me. And I had no choice. You know, they came back to me and said, no, you're going to do this job, Nayna, because we want you to do it. And anyway, carry on another couple of years. I get to be the area manager. I'm quite enjoying it. And then I get a call from the sales director to say, the retail director, to say, we've got some challenges down in the Southwest, Nayna, and we'd like you to go down as the divisional sales manager, which was like big jump now.
Big car.
And I thought, big car, big jump, but also 200 miles away from home. And I'm like, right. No, I don't think so. I live in Wolverhampton. I'm not going down to the Southwest. And anyway, I got another call. I went down to the Southwest, funnily enough. And what I think, I guess I share that is because I put a level on my ability or my aspirations very early in my career, because that's where I thought I was at. And I think one of the things I really want to convey from this conversation, and it's taken me 63 years to get there, is there is no limit. Okay, the limit is here. The drive and the passion is here. And actually, now I've started to take those blinkers off. That's where I think, for me, the best is yet to come.
How did can I ask? Sorry, go on, Ellie. Go on.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So can I ask then, how did you go from the sort of familial pressures of these are the acceptable careers to then finding yourself in like the retail space? Was that a choice you made, or was it just sort of, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just going to go down this route and see what happens?
I guess it was what I knew. So my mum had a stall on the market in Birmingham, and from about the age of 10, I always went with her. So I'd go on Saturdays and be her helper, for want of a better way of putting it. And then Vera, who ran the sweet stall, offered me a much better rate, and also a free bag of sweets at the end of the day. So I was always a negotiator, I guess, from an early age. But what I also did with my mum during my school holidays, I'd go with her on a Thursday, because that's when she'd buy her stock. So without realizing it, that was in my DNA, really. So I often say, and I'm not hamming it up so it sounds good, it's a fact, I've been serving customers since I was about 10 years old. So that's where it started. I was 16, doing my A-levels, and wanted to go to Jamaica post A-levels. And my parents had already paid for me to go when I was 10. So it wasn't like they were being terribly mean. But their challenge to me, which was a great one, was if you want to go, then you need to pay half the fare and we'll pay the balance. So I literally wrote 13 letters to every retailer in Walsall in the West Midlands, because at that point there were 13 retailers in Walsall. And Marks and Spencer were the only ones to come back. And I got the job as a Saturday girl.
Wow.
And the whole Walsall store team knew that Nayna was saving to go to Jamaica and was buying fancy knickers every month when I'd saved enough money up to take on my holiday. And that's how it started. You know, that I was 16 to 18 at Marks and Spencer. Failed my A-levels spectacularly. Came back from Jamaica thinking, Christ, what am I going to do?
I was going to ask if you went to Jamaica. At least you went to Jamaica. Thank God for that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I had a really good time. And then I know, long story short, I ended up getting in touch with M&S again. And they offered me a job as a, in fact, do you know what this is? And this is about a really good lesson where people spot your talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so the personnel manager, Beryl Brewer, because personnel managers is what they were called in those days.
I was a personnel manager,
just pulled me to, exactly. And she pulled me to one side and she said, Nayna, have you thought about applying for our management training scheme? Didn't even know it existed, to be honest. And I said, anyway, so I did. I went down to the selection board for a selection board interview in London, in Baker Street. I know exactly what I wore because I bought a new suit to go and do it. And I got through. So I then ended up on the M&S management training program. And that probably was my platform to a career in retail, because what I realised afterwards is that, you know, 2 years on the M&S management training program, the A-level entry, obviously not the grad, was my degree, because it was in the bones of retail, and it was a brilliant training ground, and I loved it a lot. So that's how it started, Ellie.
No, that's brilliant.
So how do you tell everybody, because we know about you, I know about you because we work together, but for everybody, you tell us a little bit then about, you know, like when you went from Next and when you were at George M&S and how you created your own business, because that is really interesting to me, knowing the motivation and the drive. You talked about grit, you know, like, and then we can really talk about, I think, so where's that extra 10% going to go now, because that's quite intriguing. So tell us about what got you to where you were, you know, because you've had an amazing career.
So joined M&S on its A-level management program, as I said, which was a brilliant foundation. Made the mistake of falling in love with a warehouseman, and in those days, management and warehousemen didn't mix.
I was going to say,
didn't even sit on
like
the same table.
Nayna.
I didn't even sit on the same table for lunch, let alone fraternise.
Hello, it's like different, like the Hunger Games.
So anyway, I then left M&S because there was a reasonable chance I was going to end up somewhere in the bowels of the country, and went to Next. And I think I need to get my years right here. I think that was about 85 joined Next, and they were just about to launch a brand new concept called Next Interiors, which was a wonderful collaboration that they did with Trisha Guild. And because of my experience at M&S, where I was looking after home furnishings, as it was called, it gave me a really good leg up, basically, to get the job. And I remember going to see the store manager of Macclesfield store, which is where I was working at the time. That was my latest post, to tell him I was leaving. And he thought I was mad. Why would you leave Marks and Spencer to go to this tin pot company called Next? Because that's how they viewed it. And I'll tell a story, actually, which is, I mean, everything, it's all part of the richness, isn't it? Because when I was at Wolverhampton store, the divisional sales manager, Peter, said to me, he said, I think Wolverhampton's got one of those new stores, hasn't it, Nayna? He said, called, is it Next? And I said, yeah, definitely, Peter. I said, it's just over the road. And I absolutely love it. And he said, oh, why is that? I said, in the end, I said, shall I show you? Because at that time, M&S would lay their stores out, even women's wear. That's the trouser department, that's the blouse department, that's the jumper department. And next to the opposite, it was all about colour. It was all about coordination. And I remember my first outfit that I bought from them, which I thought was called Pimento, the colour. And everything in their carcasses was coordinated, whether it was the jacket, the skirt, the blouse, the piece of knitwear, the bag, the shoes, the whole thing. And Peter just looked at it, and clearly to him, it was a jumble. And I just said, no. To me, this is perfect. I said, because I can pick everything out here and know that I've got a I've got a look, basically.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that sums up the masculine mind and the feminine mind. You know, the masculine mind, and I'm not saying male, I'm saying masculine mind, just sees the numbers. And the department numbers and the categories. I think a feminine mind sees things slightly more laterally, shall we say?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Anyway, and I remember that story a lot because it came into good use for my last time at M&S. Anyway, left M&S, went to Next, loved it. Next culturally was almost the perfect fit for me. It was all about how you treat people. It was run then by George and Liz Davis. They got married and they sent a piece of wedding cake out to every store, for instance, to feel like you were part of the family.
Big cake?
And it was small things like that that really it was a big cake. But it was, you were made to feel part of it. It was largely female led. So most of the store managers were women, most of the regional managers were women. And it just felt like a really good cultural fit for me. And I didn't know that. I didn't know words like that in the kind of mid-80s. And then there was all change. And the retail director, who I got on really well, even though he sent me to the Southwest, got fired. And I was with him the Saturday before he got fired. A new chair had come in, and I just saw Mark being completely annihilated by the new chair. And I drove home thinking, Mark ain't going to be around for much longer. And he wasn't. He was fired the following week. Big lesson for me. And then I just, when someone was appointed, and the second thing I learned about myself is who I work for and with is really important, particularly who I work for, who I report to. There has, for me, to be a degree of respect and an awareness that they've got something I can learn from. And when that wasn't happening, I just thought, nah, I don't think so.
Time to go.
So, time to go. And George Davis was setting up a new concept, which was all going to be about fashion in supermarkets. Now, this time, my family thought I was crazy because here you were working for a really sexy brand like Next, and I was going to go to Asda.
I imagine what they thought.
And I mean, Karen will know this, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but Asda in the late 80s was not the sophisticated machine it is today. Let's just say.
Everyone I said I worked for Asda thought I worked on the checkout. So you work on the checkouts, do you? Is that the level of my ambition?
And it was, and it was, and I say this colloquially, so forgive me. It was very much hairy arse grocers. And I would go in, my flippy little skirt and my jacket, and talk about wanting to get the best footage in the shot right at the front, a big map for this new clothing concept called George at Asda, and they honestly looked at you as if you were something on the end of your shoe.
I was going to say,
having come
to talk to you about how many cauliflowers they could sell, like 20 pence a cauliflower. Sorry, but they did, didn't they?
We had many. So so it was tough, really tough. It was like a baptism of fire, going from it's this wonderful feminine values culture to the height of masculinity, and I'd almost say toxic. I don't know whether Karen would
I agree.
think I'm exaggerating,
but
it felt pretty
at that time, in that era, it was really, really, really,
hard.
I think it was
and then, to be fair, Archie Norman and Alan Layton came in, and they reinvented the business, in fairness, culturally, and did an amazing job. So I was there in total, I think, I'd have to check, but I think it was about it was about 11 years. And in that time, I went from being a product manager, and again, I tell this story because I think it's hopefully worthy. When George took us on, we were going to be the regional managers. So what that meant was, the centre was going to push the stock out to the stores, and it was our job. I had about 30 shops at the time, to visit the shops and make sure they were executing the product layouts, etc., as they should be. Anyway, it's fair to say it was a bag of spanners. It was very, very difficult. And when I say that, the customers love the product, but logistically and operationally, we were all over the place. And I remember the director of menswear, who was a good friend of George's, called me, and I was in a store. I was in an Asda store somewhere in the country, and she just said, Nayna, we were a bit intrigued as to why this, I think it was the 5-gauge cotton knitwear, which we were selling for £12, was ridiculously cheap, isn't selling. She said, because we're in the office looking at the numbers, and it's not great. Mm-hmm. And I just turned to her and I said, that's because you're asking the stores to get 36 options into 8 feet of space. Yeah. And I realised that when it was silent at the other end of the phone, that I might as well have been talking Swahili, because she had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah, didn't want to hear that.
What do you mean? I said, come to a store with me. So I she met me, and I kind of laid out the knitwear as I thought it would aesthetically be pleasing. That old creative brain kicking in. I said, but there's the other 24 options over there in a box I actually can't get out. And it was definitely a light bulb moment, because it was like, when we buy the product to a budget, knitwear category, we're going to buy X options, trousers, we're going to buy Y options. Mm-hmm. No one was thinking of what it was going to look like in a store layout. Mm-hmm. Now, that isn't rocket science. And today, you laugh at surely they do, but I'm just going back to the early 90s.
Yeah.
The relationship between the buying office and the stores wasn't extricably linked. Mm-hmm. So the next thing I know, George is changing the structure. All of the regional managers are being pulled into the centre, and guess what? I end up on menswear. Fun with that. And I can remember being in my first meeting and it was a selection meeting, and the designer was there, the buyer was there, the business unit director was there, the merchandisers there, the garment technologist, George and his wife, and sitting there thinking, Christ, what am I doing on the other table? After one of those moments where you think you're at your level.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be okay, because I'll just sit back and I'll be nice and quiet, won't say a word. Anyway, somebody stands up to present knitwear, and the first person George Davis turns to is me and says, what do you think, Nayna? Oh, you're talking to me?
Yeah, you're like that. No, leave. I don't think anything. I think whatever you think.
And what I realised he was asking, and it took a moment for the penny to drop, is he didn't want my personal opinion on the knitwear. What he said was, you are the closest thing to the customer that sat around this table. So when I ask that question, I'm asking you to answer as a customer. Oh, right, fine, that's dead easy. I can do that. Yeah. And that's when I realised that's how critical having somebody who actually understands the stores and the customers is to have around that table. Yeah. Because there's an expression around, businesses can and certainly used to be very head office centric. You know, all the power was at the office and the minions were in the shops. And that for me was a massive turning point. I realized the power of my voice. That was whenever, and I was, that was probably about 92. And I left Georgia Asda in 2000, I know, because I was pregnant with my son.
Yeah, and I just joined George.
And at the time I left, I was yes, that's right. So I left as the retail marketing director. George sold the business to Asda whenever he did. And that's when we had to integrate. And there'd always been this standoff between the George team and the head office Leeds team. And then that's where I met Karen, actually. And we bonded pretty quickly. And in the end,
I come to a mad
I think it's fair to say, Karen, say again.
I thought I'd come to a mad place with all these power dynamics. Do you like, it was like, because there was all the tensions, wasn't there? It was really ridiculous, really.
And bizarrely, for whatever reason, I became, because the office was still based at Lutterworth, I persuaded Karen to come down and be our HRD.
You did.
And at the time, I think I can say I was never given the title MD, Karen, but I was pretty much running it.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were. Not in name, but
yeah, absolutely. You know, if George wanted an answer, he phoned me. Anyway, and then
what might be a silly question here, right? Please bear with me, and if it's stupid, don't laugh at me. When you say George, are you talking about why George at Asda is called George was because of this bloke called George, or did he just happen to be called George?
No. The logo for George was actually his initial GWD, George William Davis.
Because when they tried to rebrand it later on years, they didn't know how to take, because it was, I'm going to say trademark, but I'm not sure what it was, but they couldn't, there was loads of fonts you couldn't do it because you couldn't get the W and D.
I thought it might be a silly question. It's just like, no, Ellie, don't be daft. It's just a bloke called George. Like, it's just a coincidence. No. You're talking about George.
No, actually, his name, the brand was named after him, and it had his initials in the logo.
Wow. Okay, cool. Sorry for my interruption. I just really did have to ask.
It's a good question.
And then, so fast forward probably 8 years, by which time Karen and I are working together on a day-to-day basis. And Walmart buy the business, which had a massive cultural impact, I think. And my best example, and I do say this, is that when Walmart bought the business, they were very keen to inject their culture into the Asda business. And the thing that always did it for me was chanting. Karen knows exactly what
I'm told that it brings me out. You know, we were talking earlier, Ellie, about how you hate eggs.
Yeah.
The chant. Yeah. I once got asked in the tomato room, come on, Karen, they called it the tomato room, the briefing room, come and do the chant. And I just went, no. Like, and I knew that was the end of my career, because I was like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And the chant, Ellie, just so as you know, went a bit like this. So at the start of a meeting or a retail conference, as you used to go around all the sections. Yeah. So let's start with the chant. Give us an A. A. Give us an S.
S.
What was a D?
Give us a D.
We got a
I've forgotten that. Give us a pocket tap. Give us a profit tap.
Oh, you are joking.
No.
I'm not joking. I think I would have quit on the spot the day that somebody asked me to do that. I think I would have quit on the spot.
Because George was eventually, not for today, but George was integrated into Walmart International. So Walmart International had a holding, like a leadership thing. So we used to go to Walmart to the international sort of things, and every different country in Walmart International chanted in there. And my absolute favorite was the Brazilians, because it was like you were at a fiesta. So I thought I could do that chant.
It's so opposite of like British culture, isn't
my
it?
God, Ellie, it's terrible.
Couldn't be any more opposite to try and get a bunch of British people
They did it
to
though.
start chanting. Are you messing? We don't even say hello to one another. Like,
But I think
we're talking Yorkshire. We're talking a Yorkshire-based organisation.
but there was plenty of people leading the way to do the chant.
I think there was plenty of people who wanted to make an impression.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
honestly, it was
100%.
something as small as that just said, I'm out. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And again, another example of how important the right cultural fit is for you. I mean, there's something I'll talk about when I go on to tell you about my business I set up. So that was that. George set up Peruna, which launched in September 2001. I know because my son Arthur was just 6 weeks old when it launched.
I never forget this.
And I went back. Oh my God. So I went back to work after 6 weeks, having had a C-section. But a month before it launched, and therefore Arthur was 2 weeks old, the equipment concept was being fitted into a store. I think it was Cheltenham. And I lived in Cheshire. Mm-hmm. And I got a call from George's secretary to say that, so the concept's going in Nayna and George would really like you to be there. I was like, okay. My baby's 2 weeks old. He's been breastfed and I've had a C-section. I can't drive. No problem. Georgie sent in a car. I'm literally walking around the store, pushing my baby in a buggy, hoping that my breasts don't leak and having an intelligent conversation. No, at the time, you just thought, I'm really glad I'm here. You know,
I was going to ask,
I'm not being left out.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
I did, because otherwise, you know, you were either in or out, and if you were out, it was really cold and lonely.
Yeah. But
so I was,
so
you know, like
pressure to put on somebody to not be ousted.
Absolute truth. So in the end, something happened, and I had to leave the pram, the buggy, with somebody and just say, "Could you just rock this for me so he'll stay asleep?" Because I didn't rock the buggy because we wanted to change something round. I think that's what happened. So I physically kind of did something, and that was it, really. So I then was lucky enough to conceive very quickly a second time. And it was mad, absolutely mad. And then George sold the business for a lot of money. I mean, this is in the public domain, so I'm not speaking out of turn, but in excess of 100 million.
Christ.
And we'd always had a general. And anyway, let's just say George and I fell out. So
I'll ask you about that when we're not being recorded.
But I think it's really important for women, and I think
happy to share offline.
I think it's a really important concept because in and out exists in all organisations, doesn't it? You know, like being in the club or out of the club. Yes. And I think it's really important for anybody listening to this to think you're not on your own. And sometimes your behaviour to be in it, when you look back, you think, what was that about? But because being outside of it was very lonely. And so I think it was an inevitability you would fall out with someone like that because he created ins and outs. Joe.
I think number one, going back to our earlier conversation about chanting, I think there were plenty of people that chanted because they wanted to be in.
That's why I was saying it, 100%.
And if you choose to be out, then it's a career limiting decision.
I knew the minute I said I wasn't going to chant in front of 100 people in the tomato room that was it. Like, I was like, no.
And there comes a point when you just say, is that a cross I'm prepared to die on? And if it isn't, then that's your moment. So I left, and again, this is true. I say that as if something I'm telling you isn't true, but some of my stories are a bit mad, and people might think she's making that up. I'm not.
True.
So I left, and very quickly, after 18 years, I was almost oh, well, if you're going to go, you might as well go at the end of the week. Can you do a handover? Okay, that's what you want. Fine. To be fair to George's wife, she was amazing and she came to see me. But anyway, I got a call from Stuart Rose's office because obviously not only had M&S just bought the business, but Stuart Rose had just gone in as CEO in March 2004, I think, from memory. And all this what's it hit the fan with George in September, October 2004. And I got a call from Stuart's office to say, Stuart would like to see you. So I just said, well, I've just landed in Newcastle to visit a store. So, and the advice was just get on the next plane and come back because he's in the office. So I said, okay, fine. So I got down there. I'd only met Stuart once before and walked into his office, and huge personality, and I adore him. He's a great, great individual. And he said, oh, Nayna, he said, I hear you and George have had a lover's tiff. So I just looked at him and I said, sorry. And he said, well, you know, I said, do you mean I've just come out of hospital? Because I'd had a hysterectomy, by the way.
Right.
And
so just as an aside.
Just as an aside. And Stuart said, oh, no, because he could see my face. I wasn't going there. Yeah. And he said, no, seriously, no. He said, George is really worried about you because you've not been well, have you? Okay. So he said, and he's worried that you're having some kind of, emotional reaction to it. So I just looked him dead in the eye and I said, I had a hysterectomy, Stuart. I said, and when a woman has a hysterectomy, they tend to remove her uterus. I said, not her fucking brains. Is that too naughty? Sorry.
No, that's
I'm just really glad that you got to see that, because the audacity of that is unbelievable.
I love it.
Well done. Oh, I feel like you've said it for all people.
Should we have a conversation? I said, yeah, let's. Anyway, listen, I say that. I love Stuart. He was a big investor in my business. So, and he did a lot for my career. Yeah. So he just said, look, do you want to, are you not going to go off and be a domestic goddess, or is it because you still want to work? And I said, no. I bought a piece of land in Jamaica, I don't know how many years ago, it doesn't matter. I said, and the ambition was always to build a house. Mm-hmm. I said, so I want to do that. I'm going to take 3 or 4 months out. Anyway, and he just said, call me when you're back. So I did. And that's how I ended up at M&S. And so I joined M&S in March 2005. It was 6 months before we got
there. Built Nayna, just a little aside of that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was called Hope House. House on the beach. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, Stuart was amazing for my career. He was a big supporter, and I was frustrated because I didn't really understand levels. I hadn't done corporate world before.
It's properly corporate M&S, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was going in at this level, and I thought that was good. And I thought, actually, I realised within a nanosecond, no, you need to be at the big table to actually have an impact. Because it sounds good when you say you've got this many direct reports and down the table. And I was often an executive coach, and by the retail director, who was brilliant, again, also very supportive. And I said to him, no, I don't need an executive coach, as in, I don't even know what one is.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And it was the best piece of advice anyone gave me, because I then met an amazing woman, Trudy, who became my coach, and is now and will always be one of my lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And we talked about what this was about for me. And one of the bits of advice she gave me was, sometimes, Nayna, you almost, and obviously it was Amy so-and-so who did the TED Talk, Fake It to Make It. It was a version of that. Because what Trudy said to me, sometimes you just have to behave like a director for people to think, how come she's not a director? And that was a really good piece of advice. And anyway, long story short, it happened about, I think, 2008. I might be wrong on my dates, but later Stuart created a management board, and I was one of there were about 12 of us around the table. So that's awesome. That's how I got to be on the management board of Marks and Spencer.
Yay!
So that was great.
But you did pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then again, the CEO moved on. New CEO came in, had the most humongous ambition for the stores, for the estate, and across GM and foods, and asked me to lead it, which was really, in some ways, exciting, but in other ways, I mean, we're talking like hundreds of millions of pounds here as a project. And I said yes, of course, but I also knew it would make me one of the least popular people in the business, because you were basically executing his vision, and not everybody agreed with it, even around the board table. So it wasn't easy, and but I did it. And 18 months later, I then spoke to the CEO and said, okay, having done that, I'd like to now talk about me and where I go from here. And what I really wanted to do was to become a trading director. I wanted to get my hands on product, and I realised, it wasn't going to happen. You know, they saw me as a brilliant retail operator, but not as a trader, not creative enough. So I just thought, okay, fine. And I just said, look, I don't want to be the queen of visual merchandising, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go away and have a think. And I spoke to my line manager, who was brilliant. And I said, Steve, I think it's time for me to go. And he said, why? You know, and we did all that thing. You know, I can put you in touch with some really good headhunters. And I said, no. I said, you're not hearing me. I said, I think it's time for me to go, and I think we should negotiate my exit. And he said, no. CEO doesn't do that. All right, okay. So I went back the next week for our one-to-one, and I said, okay. I said, so since he came in, there are 11 directors that have left the business. I said, 2 of them have announced where they're going and have gone on to other jobs. There's another remaining 9. I said 8 of them are women. I said, so I think we start this conversation again. And he just looked at me and said, you're serious, aren't you? I said, yeah, I'm out. And let's just talk about how we exit. So I did. I exited on the 31st of August 2013. 2013. No idea what I was going to do. Everybody assumed that she's obviously going off to a big job. I had no idea, no intention.
Yeah.
And long story short, I guess, a number of people came to me and said, look, there's a real commercial opportunity out there for the 50-plus woman. You've got a really good handle on the customer. Why don't you think about doing something? And that was the first time I decided to acknowledge that there'd been a little creature, either in my head or on my shoulder, call it whatever you want, that had said, you should think about starting up your own business. You should think about doing something. And even at that point, and I'm now, 52, I think, thereabouts. I'm thinking, I can't do this just me. I need to get the people around. I need to know the buyer and the designer, and I need this and I need that. So I guess it was all set up for Hope to be a multi-million-pound business. You know, we raised £1.2 million on our first raise.
Wow,
and we had big investors behind us, like Stuart, for instance. I've never raised funds before, and I've promised myself I will never do it again.
I was going to say, that was terrifying. Terrifying. I
hated every single minute of it.
Did you?
And yeah, I I was when I say I wasn't good at it, I was good at selling the pitch.
Yeah.
It wasn't how I wanted to operate.
Yeah,
you're talking to somebody
that.
who's been financially independent from about the age of 12.
Yeah.
So therefore, asking for money didn't really sit here terribly well. Anyway, long story short, we launched the brand in September 15, and it was brilliant and the hardest thing I've ever done. In all at the same time. And one of the best expressions I heard when we were in the middle of it all was starting your own business is like jumping off a cliff and trying to build an airplane on the way down, because that's how it feels. You have no idea what you don't know until the shit's about to hit the fan. And then it's like, right, what do I do?
Yeah.
Anyway, the one thing we did a number of other raises, but the reality was we couldn't get people outside of that inner circle of investors to see the potential in the business, which will forever be my greatest disappointment. And the people who got
this, do you think that's because something you said earlier about when you were brought in to George Davis's selection review, and George Davis said you're the only person that knows the customer? Do you think it was a similar thing at this, that the investors weren't the customer and didn't see the gap, or something different?
I think it was, we don't like to talk about old women,
Right.
And
I didn't say that, but
who we are. We're old women. The wonderful author, I can't remember, has an expression for, she calls her mother the old woman, in jest, obviously, but that's it. And what I realize now is that when you're trying to tap into UK funds, the amount of money that's raised through fundraising or venture capitalist funds, venture capitalist funds, as a woman you've got less than 2% chance of securing it, and as an individual from an ethnic minority background, your odds go down to 0.08%, I think. So I didn't tick either of those boxes, funnily enough.
Add
the fact that I was over 50, and honestly, I mean, one of the pitches I did, and I this again, I'm not exaggerating for dramatic effect. You could almost see them glaze over when I say it's for 50 plus women, because what they see is their mothers, what they see is grey hair, what they see is people who are past it. If I was trying to raise money for a lingerie brand with lots of imagery of girls with bigots, it might have been a tad easier, but it was hard.
That's really interesting to me.
And what
Sorry, hello. I was just saying that's really interesting to me, because what I have, and this is somebody that has no retail knowledge whatsoever, but what you tend to hear is that actually women control the purse strings. If don't ask me how this is right, bear with me. So there was a comedian who had made a lot of their content backing women and being supportive of women, and that was how he'd got his fan base, and then had this really strange incident happen, and then basically turned around and said, I don't want my core audience to be women, I want the blah blah blah. Right, ignore that. And everyone was saying such a stupid thing, because actually the reality of the situation is that if you want people at your comedy shows, it is women that decide to buy the tickets. It's women that get the presents for people. It's so particularly at 50 plus, these are people that are probably well established in their careers. They've got the income to be able to spend on what they want. So to not invest in that, to me, seems crazy.
Well, Ellie, you've just summed up, because my argument is the 50 plus woman's the only one with any money. And she's influenced, and this is a fact from a piece of data research that we used to refer to a lot. She influences 80% of the household spend. So if it's not her own money, she's influencing how he spends it, how they spend it. So to not see her as a force for change, I think is naive beyond all expectations. And I often say that the people who got my brand the best were the customers.
Yeah, 100%,
you know. So when we got to a point in January 2023 where I won't bore you with the detail, but my last two investors understandably pulled because they just couldn't see anybody else coming in, and if nobody else comes in, then the onus is always on them. So with much heartache, they both pulled, which that was it, game over. And again, going back to two of my dearest friends, and they just said, look, your customers love your brand so much, you know, why don't you set up a campaign to fundraise, not for investment, but literally for cash flow? And I just said, mad. Yeah, I said, that's mad. Anyway, we did. We launched the Save Our Hope, which launched, I think it was the 1st of March, that 2013. And listen, you know, we raised 70k, which is fantastic. We did. I never thought we were going to raise 500,000, but what I did hope was that from a PR angle, that somebody would read the story and think, okay, that's quite interesting.
That's powerful,
And we got some decent PR because we ended up in the Guardian because one of their senior journalists was a big customer of ours, and they made that happen for us. We ended up on Radio 5 Live with Adrian Chiles talking about it. And he was really perplexed because he just said, so Nayna, tell me, fellow Brummie, you're asking customers to give you money that doesn't give them any shares in your business, that you can buy a product that they're going to buy again with their own money. And I just said, yeah, that's about it. And he just said, I can't believe it. And I said, in some respects, Adrian, neither can I. And because he's a mad sports commentator, he just said, nearest I can relate to it, he said, he's in days gone by, if a football club was broke, they'd have buckets out at the end of the match and kind of collect. And I said, exactly. I said, so your supporters are your greatest fans. Anyway, we managed to raise enough money to enable me to buy my phase 1 of Spring 23, which we did. And as I said, I really hoped that we'd find somebody who would come in and think, okay, let's give this a go, because all of the KPIs were just on the tipping point of getting to the million turnover, just about to break even from a profitability point of view. But it just wasn't to be. And we closed the business on the 9th of June 2023. And I can remember coming home from that day, having told the team, told the investors, told the customers, and I walked in and the kids were here. Florence was back from her travelling, and they'd bought flowers, cards, chocolates, and we just sat and cried, the three of us. It broke my heart.
It must have broken your heart. It's like, it must have been, it's like grief, isn't it? It's proper, it's not just closing a business, it's that attachment and what it meant, and that whole grieving thing.
I say, I mean, you've both endured significant grief in the last 12 months. So I say this carefully and respectfully, but I felt like I was grieving.
I think that makes sense. I think
that's total sense.
Something I love and created.
Poured everything into,
So I have to say 2023 was probably one of the toughest years of my life. Thank God for my kids. They really carried me through. And my friends, they were amazing. And because what really came clear to me was my lack of purpose. You know, well, what do I do now? And I bumped into somebody in our local pub who was a customer, actually. And she said to me, oh, you know, how are you now, Nayna? She said, it must be good to be a lady of leisure. I could have
Oh my God.
absolutely slapped her.
I was going to say the absolute worst thing to say to you.
And I just said to her, I've never aspired to be a lady of leisure. I've never been a lady of leisure. And no, I'm not looking forward to that. Thanks. As in, seriously.
About loss of purpose. And I talking about this to Ellie the other week. When you've lost your purpose, it's quite lonely. You lost Nayna?
No, I don't know.
I mean, just digressing for a second. My mum's 84 and is the most amazing woman, honestly. She looks fabulous. She's still active. She's still socially engaged. And the older I get, the more I realise how important it is for all of us to have purpose in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the thing that gives us longevity.
Yeah, it does.
And the more, and I say this as someone who's recently visited two of my oldest friends, 86 and 76, and can see that because they have retracted, oh my goodness, you know, I went to visit both of them a couple of weeks ago in the Midlands, got to my mum's and said, oh, can I have a large gin and tonic? Because I just needed the relief. I just said, thank God for you.
Yeah.
So this purpose, I feel very passionately about.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about that then. When we introduced you, we said, like, you know, that you'd said that you were hoping to become an agent for change. What does that look like for you, do you think?
Well, it's still forming in my own mind, Ellie, is the truth of the matter. But what I thought I'd share with you is where I've been over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
So when we had to close the business, when the insolvency agent came to the office and told me what they had accepted as a cash payment for the remainder of my spring 23 stock, which was about 500 units, Florence, my daughter, was with me and she just looked at me. She said, Mum, we'll buy it for that. The royal we, obviously. Yeah. So so the next day we went and we gave him the cash. We took the product away. It was up in my attic, literally till about Easter the following year, 2024. And it was Harvey who just said to me, are we going to do anything with that? Or are we taking it to the charity shop? And I put one post on Instagram, having not posted for a year. Yeah, just under a year, to be fair. And just said I was having an attic sale, you know, join me. I'm going to do an Insta live on Saturday, join me. And we did, and we sold out. Everything was 80% off, so I guess that wasn't difficult. But what was the big learning, and was I was then for the first time in 9 months back in contact with my customers. And when generally the emails, because everything was done via email, there were 4 key messages. 1, it's so good to have hope back. 2, so looking forward to getting my copper tissue paper wrapped parcel. 3, still haven't found anything like you were doing, Nayna. Yeah. And 4 was, we know you're going to do something, so when you do, will you just keep in touch? And I was like, this is crazy, because I don't intend to do anything, as in I've no idea what I'm going to do. And Harvey said to me, we were away for the weekend, and he just said, why don't you just go to Italy and buy some product and see what happens? So that felt like permission, you know. The belts were off. It was like, right, okay. So I did. So I kind of had a conversation with our partner stroke agent out there and said, look, and I think it's important to explain how this works. So in Italy, there are no big department stores. So they have a really big business where independent stores are of the order of the day. There's no Marks and Spencer, there's no John Lewis. Every town has their independent shops who go direct to the factories in Prato to buy products, because most of the factories will have their own collection. So I said to Georgia, if I came out, would they let me in? Close the business. All of my factories were paid. Would they let me have access to their own collection? And would they let me buy a small quantity? And she just said yes, yes, and yes, book a flight. So I did.
How exciting.
Bought 100 pieces.
Did you?
Came back with it all in my suitcase. And I had a Zoom call with 20 customers the following week and sold probably 70% of what I bought.
Oh, wow.
But it was back to the, oh my God, Nayna, it's so good to see this. It's so good to see you. You know, and you will do autumn, won't you? And I just said to them, look, I don't know where this is going, but the train's left the station and I'm on it. So let's see.
Yeah.
And I've said that for the last 9 months, and I've now realised I need to take a hold of the steering wheel and decide what this is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much what I said earlier, I've got a brainstorm session with half a dozen customers tomorrow where they're coming to my house, and I'm going to share with them my thoughts on what I think this is about.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose in summary, to answer your question, Ellie, this is definitely a clothing range. That's how it started life. That is curated and put together very much with a 50+ woman in mind.
Yeah.
Even though I'm 63. That said, my 22-year-old daughter takes plenty of it, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But what I've also found is that I've got this amazing WhatsApp group with like 100+ women on. And what those women don't talk about to each other on this WhatsApp group isn't worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a real sense of community, of feeling supported, of feeling relevant, of feeling engaged. And that to me is the thing that is blowing my mind, is actually the way in which these women who've never met are so engaged.
Yeah.
So there is something about the product, there's something about the community. For instance, we did a road trip last May, and we took the product out to the customers. So we went to Edinburgh, Chester, Leicester, Bath, London. Edinburgh was our first one. The frisson of excitement was unbelievable.
Thinking about the rugby.
And I'm only talking 20 women, so it wasn't like we had a theatre full, but more, they all turn up, they look at their product. We have a nice lunch at the Glen Eagles townhouse, and afterwards, because I'd set up mini WhatsApp groups for each venue, and I said I'm going to close them down after the roadshow.
Yeah. And
the Edinburgh lot said, no, don't close ours down, please, because we really like it. And now friendships are being formed. Danielle, who was there, is a writer. So she has a book launching in November, and half the bloody Cope community are going to Edinburgh to support Danielle. So
the clothes are bringing people there, aren't they? The clothes. The
way I'm saying it at the moment, and as I said, it's still a work in progress, but I think Hope Curated by Nayna is a conduit to our wellness and well-being, because I think fashion is part of that. If we look good, we feel good. Yeah. If we feel good, then it influences all sorts of things around us. And
I also think what you're talking about,
and this is, as I said,
sorry, go on.
And genuinely, as I said, I'm still working this through, so I haven't got the words exactly right. But when I say an agent for change, I really want to elevate this group of women who society is saying we're invisible, and I'm saying no, I'm relevant, and I intend to be relevant right to the very end. And I think there's a whole army of women who would buy into that and say, yeah, we are going to be the best version. I say the third trimester should be the best trimester. And I think there's a movement to be created here.
Yeah. I think it's you can listen to every woman we speak to, like we just were speaking to Claire earlier. I think there's a sense in all women. What I think the sense is that some women are creating in their area of expertise this movement. And I think it's exciting, and I think the Woot concept is like the womaniverse, where you connect all the different communities together, and then you can beat some of this system that still exists that you talked about. Why on earth could you not get that investment? Well, we know why if we're absolutely truthful.
I know, but it still feels it's still. You're right. You are right. But that is mental to me. It's stupid. Really, is what I think. It's stupid. Yeah.
It shows where we are, and that's why movement and creating that is one of the most powerful things. So, but actually, if you have the clothes as well, because your clothes are great. So,
yeah. And somebody asked me the other day, and forgive me for a second, but I think it's really relevant to this conversation.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me the other day, we'd had a brainstorm session on the Saturday, and the question somebody asked me afterwards was, is this chapter more about a lifestyle movement that happens to curate great clothes, or whether is it a clothing brand that empowers a lifestyle? And I said in response, after I'd cogitated 24 hours, I said, I think the answer to that question is both.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but I think it evolves. So I said, I think it's a clothing brand that empowers a lifestyle today, but where I want to take it is that it becomes a lifestyle movement that just happens to have amazing clothes.
Yeah.
Because
and I think that's
the product is what.
The product's the catalyst, isn't it? So the product is at the heart of it. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's really exciting.
And that's, Ellie, a long answer to your question. That's where I think, my role as an agent for change is to take that idea and build it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I need to make sure is that when I look back, they're with me. So because as a group, we become more powerful.
Yeah.
100%.
And I tell you what we'll do. This time next year, we'll do the same thing again, and we can see where it's come along, in the space of a year. Because it's important to see
in the clothing.
Yeah.
Just conscious of the time. Is there anything, Nayna, that we haven't spoken about that you'd like to sort of maybe share with us, or anything from your wise words of your years? But we've had plenty today. It's been amazing.
I think I've shared quite a lot.
So, yeah, it's been great.
Some useful anecdotes in there for people.
No, it's been really awesome.
Well, that's brilliant. Yeah. Well, then I'll ask you the final question then. If you were to choose a song that would be the theme song for your life, whether that be all of your life or just one for the moment, what song would it be?
I know the answer to that immediately. And I knew I wanted to call my brand Hope. My logo was designed by my father-in-law, who was a graphic designer who was actually dying at home in our house. And I hadn't even told Harvey what I was thinking of doing, even though Tony and I had a couple of meetings, and he designed my logo. And we had got a skiing holiday booked. Not that I ski, by the way. I've rather got hot needles in my mouth. And basically, it is relevant. Harvey's brother and his wife came and looked after the house and Tony and Pauline whilst we went away, because they all felt we needed a break, which we did. And as I said, hadn't shared the graphic with Harvey, hadn't shared the logo or the name. And we were in a bar having a drink one afternoon after they'd all finished skiing. And a song I'd never heard by Shaggy, obviously Jamaican, called Hope. And
I don't think I've heard it.
Oh my God, listen to the words. I play it to this day. And particularly at the moment, because it's all about not giving up. And that would be my song.
Yeah.
And it's Jamaican, reggae. It's perfect for me.
Yeah. I think your whole story has sort of lent into that not giving up element that is clearly has been with you the whole time. So yeah, just thank you for taking the time out to talk to us. It's been really interesting.
No, it's been lovely. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the airtime.
No, God, not
What
at
a weird
all. Not at all. You
privilege.
made it a breeze. But yeah. So thank you to Nayna for joining us, and thank you to everyone for listening. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.